Jinshi, the magistrate of Jinzhou, the executor of Jue's will, and the only reason this game's story was actually bearable, is finally out, and she is the new Spectro DPS on the roster. And today I'm going to be telling you how to build her. So first, let's talk about her Echo set. Now, the set that is best tailored towards her is the 4-piece Celestial Light set, with the 2-piece giving 10% Spectro damage, and then the 5-piece giving 30% Spectro damage when Intro skill is cast. Now, she'll always be going onto the field with her Intro skill, so this is essentially just 40% Spectro damage bonus. Alternatively, you can use 2-piece combinations of Spectro damage, attack percent, and energy recharge. I mainly recommend Spectro and attack here, since they're already in the same tacit field, but the energy regen set is very close as well. These stats have been pretty well balanced. However, I will say that the 4-piece Celestial Light set is a lot better, even if you cannot get the right main stats. Now, speaking of these main stats, on your 1 cost, you're always going to be going for attack percent. Well, why would you ever want to go for HP percent or defense percent on this character? For your 3 cost, you want to go for Spectro damage percent. Alternatively, if you cannot get a good Spectro damage piece, go for attack percent. And then for your 4 cost, you want to use crit rate or crit damage. The best setup is a 4-3-3-1-1 setup, using crit, Spectro damage, attack, and attack. Next up is replacing Spectro damage with attack percent, and then finally, you can use a 4-4-1-1-1 setup, using crit rate, crit damage, and then triple attack percent. As for her substats, you want to get energy recharge until you're around 130 to 135%. This is when you're going to be able to use your ult every 2 half rotations. Then you want to get crit, attack percent, skill damage bonus, liberation damage bonus, and then finally flat attack. Having good echoes is all nice and good, but what about her weapon choices? Well, let's first of all discuss her signature weapon, the Aegis of Harvest. Aegis of Harvest is literally made for her, and obviously it's going to be her best in slot. It has a maximum base attack, also having crit rate in its substat. It gives a lot of skill damage and is by far the best weapon because skill damage is in fact, most of what she's doing. When you do your intro skill, you gain 24% skill damage, and then when you cast your skill again, you gain another 24%. Since she starts her rotation with her skill, that's essentially 48% skill damage just right off the bat. And considering that her basic attacks in her enhanced mode are also skill damage, this is just essentially buffing almost everything in her kit. Alternatives would be starting with Verdant Summit. It's a very strong stat stick, giving the same base attack while having crit damage instead of crit rate. Its passive, however, is mostly useless because she doesn't do any heavy attack damage. As for Lustrous Razor, it's the same situation. High base attack with an attack percent substat. But instead of giving a useless passive, it gives ultimate damage, which is still a bit relevant, and also energy regen, which is good for Jinshi. For your best 4-star weapon, you're going to turn to the Helios Cleaver, which gives attack percent after skill is cast. And because of Jinshi starts her rotation with her skill, this has plenty of time to stack before her nuke goes off. Broadblade 41 gives energy recharge as its substat, and also gives attack percent while you're at 80% HP or above. Considering the fact that Jinshi can need up to 30% energy recharge, the energy recharge is not wasted, and the attack percent on its passive is pretty appreciated. Autumn Trace is the Battle Pass weapon. It has a good amount of crit on it with a respectable base attack, but because the passive requires you to do basic or heavy attack damage, Jinshi cannot stack this with her normal rotation. The reason I point this out is because she technically is using basic attack inputs, but because it counts as skill damage, it cannot stack up the Autumn Trace's passive. If you've been enjoying the video so far, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, follow me on Twitter and join my Discord. Now, we know what Jinshi's best equipment is, but we don't really know why yet, which is why we're going to discuss her kit now. So, let's start off with the basics. These really aren't going to do much outside of triggering her first resonance skill when you start a Tower of Adversity, because after the 4th basic attack, you can press the skill, which will put her into her enhanced mode. But This skill will also put her in the enhanced mode through a different way. She'll dash forward, and if used after basic attack 4 or your intro skill, you will enter the enhanced mode. This is why you're realistically never going to actually use your basic attacks after the first rotation, because you're just going to use your intro skill to go in, and that's going to get you your enhanced mode. And then speaking of the enhanced mode, let's go to her Forte Circuit next. The Forte Circuit has everything about her enhanced mode. She'll be able to go into the air and attack there, and then when you do your basic attack string, it will not be interrupted. It will also be converted into skill damage. Also, speaking of which, literally everything is converted, but only the basic attack matters here. After your 4th basic attack, you will gain another skill, which will just be a big nuke. This is going to be a very large portion of Jinhsi's damage. This is because the meter that she has here above her health bar is a stack system that will increase this skill's damage. When a teammate does damage, Jinshi gains 1 stack, with a cooldown of once every 30 seconds per element. A coordinated attack will give her 2. This stacks up to 50 times, so this will empower her skill by a very large amount. After this special nuke skill is used, Jinshi will gain the Unison effect, which essentially gives her a free outro skill. This can be triggered once every 25 seconds. Now let's go to the ult, considering we skipped it. The ult is essentially just a nuclear bomb. It doesn't give any special buffs or anything, it's just there to be a funny button that does a lot of damage. The intro skill is nothing impressive, it just does some damage, but you still want to use it because it gets you into your enhanced mode after your E. And then the outro skill lowers the cooldown of her stack generation to 1 second. This is incredibly important, because the stack generation gives Jinshi so much extra damage it's not even funny. Her first inherent talent will just give her 20% Spectro damage bonus for free, and the second gives her intro skill 50% extra multiplier. Now, let's look at Jinshi's teams now that we know how she works. Considering that there's such a big emphasis on coordinated attacks, we want to use supports that have them in their kit. So the best team is going to be with Yinlin and Verena. They both have a lot of coordinated attacks, making them perfect. Verena is already the best healer in the game, with very low field time, strong heals, and good team-wide buffing as well. 20% attack to the entire party is, you know, pretty good. And also 15% damage deepen from her outro skill. Yinlin is also the highest damaging sub DPS in the game, and because she has coordinated attacks, she is the obvious option. However, I would like to say, if we ever get a coordinated attack unit that has an outro skill that is a lot more useful to Jinshi, I can probably see Yinlin being replaced. Another character you can use if you do not have Yinlin is Mortefi. Mortefi is probably the second best coordinated attack support in the game when it comes to being a sub DPS. And while Mortefi just has way less damage than Yinlin does, he can use the Static Mist weapon and Moonlit Cloud set to buff Jinshi up. So I'd say that's still worth something. If you also do not have Mortefi, or he's busy with your GN team, you don't have a lot of options left. But Yenwu is someone that I would like to mention, because he does have coordinated attacks. But his damage output isn't as high, and he will only be there to stack up Jinshi. For Verena replacements, we start with Baiji. She generates a bit less stacks than Verena, and she has longer field time, but she'll be a fine replacement for Verena. Instead of giving 20% attack to the team, she gives 15%, which is, you know, still very similar, and also has the exact same outro skill. She is a very good character. The English text for ultimate may not reflect it, but her ult still does count as coordinated attacks, so you're not losing too many stacks from using her instead of Verena. There's also Tao Chi, but she has plenty of issues herself. While her outro skill is incredible for Jinshi, her field time is way too long and it's just not worth using her. She's an okay pick if you have no one else left. Now let's get into a conversation about should I get Sequence 1 or Refinement 1 of the weapon. Just get the weapon. Weapon banner in this game is a lot kinder to players as there is no dice roll of which 5-star you get. You just get the one you're rolling for. You can also buy sequences from the shop anyway, so pulling for the weapon will still get you closer to Sequence 1, and R1 is just way more powerful than the Sequence 1. But what does the Sequence 1 even do? Well, it gives Jinshi's nuke skill 80% damage bonus, being 20% for every normal attack she does, which is just gonna be 80%, I don't know why they made it so difficult. While the nuke is a very large part of Jinshi's kit, you would think that 80% damage bonus would be a lot better than it is. It's going to be about an 18% damage increase. Her Sequence 2 will give Jinshi max E-stacks when out of combat for 4 seconds. Amazing for Overworld, but in Tower of Adversity, it will only work on the first E, so it ends up not being a big damage increase most of the time. S3 gives Jinshi 25% attack after casting Intro Skill up to 2 times. This is a 20% damage increase, so it's pretty solid. Her Sequence 4 will give the entire team 20% damage bonus after using her ult for 20 seconds. Good, since she wants to be played with strong sub-DPS characters, but this late into the sequence, you probably just want Jinshi to be better. 7% damage increase. The S5 is going to multiply her damage multiplier for her ultimate by 2.2, which means you're essentially more than doubling your ultimate damage. Pretty decent sequence, about a 16% damage increase. And then the Sequence 6 adds 45% multiplier to Jinshi's enhanced skill and an additional 45% per E-stack. And since her stack meter can stack up to 50 times, that is a downright stupendous multiplier increase, and ends up being a 54% damage increase. Jinshi is very fun, and I enjoy her playstyle a lot. Now, do I think she's the best DPS in the game? Yes. Do I think she is so good to the point where I think everyone should pull for her? Probably not everyone, but if you care about meta, you probably should pull for her. I hope that everyone who has Jinshi was helped by this guide, and I hope that everyone who doesn't have Jinshi has at least learned a bit more about her. I don't really know why you would be here if you don't even have the character and don't want the character. But that'll be all from me. Peace.